I'm always struck by this gospel that we just heard at the ending there. We hear John the Baptist talking about how, right, the grain and the chaff are going to be separated, and the chaff is going to be burned up and, just all consumed by fire. And Jesus proclaimed the good news. Okay. I think it is a really good reminder to us in this season of Advent that this is a time of preparing ourselves for the comings of Jesus. You've heard me say this throughout the season. We prepare ourselves to celebrate His coming among us the first time as a baby that fills in that feed trough, coming into our hearts every day, and coming at the end times, when there will be that separation. We've got the images of the grain and the chaff, we got the goats and the sheep and all of that. There will be that reckoning, that time when there will be, the Lord will come and judge. And so that's, again, what we prepare ourselves also. But if we are inviting Him into our lives every day, I think that final judgment will take care of itself. And so instead of being filled with fear of that, I think we're to respond to the beautiful invitation to allow Him to come into our hearts on a daily basis. St. Paul, in our second reading, he gives us a lot to chew on in that short little section, chapter 4 of Philippians, and verses 4 to 7. This week, as a staff, we prayed with that text, and there's 5 of us on the staff, and we all had something else that we took from these 3 little verses to reflect upon. I just think there's a lot here for us to try to carry with us throughout this week. Of course, the first part of it is rejoice in the Lord always. I shall say it again, rejoice. And we had that beautifully proclaimed for us. Isela, thank you for proclaiming that for us. ¿Cómo se dice en español rejoice? Rejoice. The word rejoice. How do you say in the Spanish? You remember? What was the word they used? Regocija. Regocija. Gracias. Regocija. Rejoice in the Lord always. And how do we get to that point where we can rejoice? Because we also hear that he says, have no anxiety at all. How many of us are there? How many of us are there going, yeah, no. All the presents are wrapped, all of them are bought, all the parties are finished, all of the cooking, all of the baking, yeah, no. It's all good. Just for those of you online, there are no hands up right now, okay? So, yeah. So how do we get to that point where we strive to hand over that anxiety? How do we get to that point? I'm with you, okay? I'm somebody that can't really raise his hand right now about no anxiety at all, okay? However, I think I'm getting better at what Paul gives us as one of the roadmaps for getting rid of anxiety. He says, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Make your requests known to God through prayer and petition. So he's saying, hand it over to the Lord. Hand over that source of anxiety. Okay? When I was a teenager, I'd like to say learning how to drive, although I started driving when I was like 8 years old. So I wasn't exactly new at it when I was a teenager. But anytime when I was driving legally with my mom in the car, she would at times respond with a little bit of anxiety. And I used to say, Mom, one of these days you are going to inhale the entire dash. The dash of this vehicle is just going to be sucked into your lungs, okay? Because I don't know how much that dash can take with her constantly going. Well, this apple didn't fall that far from the tree. I realize that tends to be my response to things as well. My first response is, it's just, and it gives me that little bit of anxiety. That anxiety comes in. But I do believe I'm getting better at then handing it over to the Lord and not holding on to that anxiety and not thinking that I'm supposed to get it all figured out myself. However, I also recognize, and I'll admit to all of you, that even those things that I have handed over to the Lord, I go ahead at times and think He's too busy. And so I'll go ahead and grab them back myself and go ahead and try to figure it out and get her done myself, right? I do that as well. But when I do that, I don't experience what Paul says will come to us. And again, more richness from these 3 verses. When we do hand it over to the Lord, he says, then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Then the peace which is beyond all understanding. So when you're wondering, have I really handed it over to the Lord? Have I surrendered it? Am I offering over the anxiety? How do I know? I think Paul says it very clearly. Then we'll have that sense of peace which is beyond anything else we've known. That's when we'll know that we have handed it over. Okay? And I have felt that. And then there is no excuse for me to go back and pick it up. But even then, when I've felt that sense of peace, of surrendering it, I still go back at times and go, let me try to get this done myself. But that's when we can tell that we are in communion with God, that we are in a good space with God, because that peace, which is beyond all understanding, will be a part of our life. We will feel that sense of peace, which will allow us then to rejoice. So we have this time yet to prepare, to get ready to rejoice with the Lord coming into our lives. In the gospel, we're called to be generous, right? John the Baptist tried to prepare people for receiving the one who was coming after him, not by bringing all kinds of attention to himself and trying to make himself all that in a bag of chips, but always pointing the way to the one who's coming after him. And he also encouraged people when they said, well, what are we supposed to do? He basically says, be generous. If you want to be ready to receive the Lord, then make room by being generous, giving things away. So that's another way that we can prepare ourselves as well in this time that we have left before we'll celebrate Him filling in that feed trough. Allow the anxiety of this particular time of year to go away. Incidentally, last night after Mass, somebody asked me, so would you say as a priest, is it more busy before Easter or Christmas? I said, oh, that's an easy one. It's Christmas for sure. Because we have the same kind of stuff church-wise. We have a season where I'm always going out and hearing a lot of confessions. This week I'll go to, I think it's this week I've got St. Philip Neri and Roncalli High School, I think this week, to go out and hear confessions. Last week there was a couple of other places that I went to. The week before that there was others. We had our own service here. So it's that time of year to hear confessions. But we also have all of the other stuff that all of you have, right? People want me to come to Christmas parties. Staff kind of, I feel anyway, that expectation to get staff people gifts. To get ready, even though we have laid down this kind of a good law, I think, that our parish Christmas parties are celebrated during Christmas and not during Advent. But during our meeting this week, we're like, okay, we got to get ready for that party. So those kind of things, you know, it adds to a lot of to-do lists, right? Easter, it's kind of just the church stuff, really. I don't go and color a lot of Easter eggs, for example, okay? So it's easy answer for me. The anxiety goes up a lot more for me before Christmas, like it does for a lot of us, I think. And so let us try to offer that up, to let it go, and to try to be okay with, if all of it doesn't get done, then I can be okay with that. I'll just continue to allow the peace that the Lord wants me to experience to soak in. So I can have that peace. And that when people come together for the feast of the Nativity, then we can share that peace with those that we gather with. That we don't just go, okay, fine, let's celebrate and then let's rest. But that we actually are able to share the one that wants to come into our lives now with those we gather with on the feast of Christmas.